Hi everyone. I'm just making a video today for you. If this is your first video, then you wouldn't know that I made a few other videos about spiritual causes for certain issues like confusion, indecisiveness, anxiety and worry, upheaval, turmoil, and chaos, the spiritual reasons. So these are just more of the deeper reasons, what I find originating reasons for your issues. So it's not so much looking at the practical or looking at the surface causes of what is going on in your life. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about low self esteem, worth, and confidence. And I think that this is really, really important because we have these ideas of why we have low confidence, self esteem, and worth. And of course, they're valid, but I think that sometimes it's a little bit deeper and a little bit more complex than we think it is, right? Because for me, I've struggled a lot with self esteem greatly, and I worked on myself for a long time, okay? And I found that it was just always a consistent struggle. So I I said to myself, it's got to be deeper. It's got to be more. There's got to be another reason or multiple reasons why I still cannot seem to like myself, right? So, anyway, I mean, this is just based off of what I believe and what I've experienced and what I've seen with other people and what I've read too. So, hopefully, these points can offer maybe a different perspective or can supplement something that you've suspected that you were dealing with. Okay? So anyway, let's get right into it. The first point I wanted to speak about with spiritual causes is having, if you are not excessively, if you've been struggling with self-esteem and confidence and worth for a really long time, and you just cannot seem to break that. Okay, you've been working mentally and emotionally, and maybe not spiritually, but mentally and emotionally. You've been doing all that you can to break it, and you have not been able to. Sometimes, what can happen is that we're in a world full of with other people, right? And sometimes we absorb the projections of other people, and this is a real term in psychology. Now, the distinguishing factor is, okay, let me just explain a little bit about projection in psychology, but really what it means is when people have a difficult feelings, okay, particularly painful feelings within themselves, usually about who they are and how they feel about themselves, okay? It's something that they don't want to acknowledge, it's something they don't want to recognize. What they do is they project that out onto someone else to make it seem as though the other person has these attributes or characteristics or issues that they know that they have. But it's done on such a subconscious level that sometimes they don't even realize that they're doing the projection. Okay, and projection can be done by criticizing and blaming and avoiding, denying, um, manipulating circumstances to make it look like the other person is really at fault or is guilty of or possesses this characteristic that they find so undesirable within themselves. That's just a little bit about psychology projection. But what I wanted to say and distinguish is that sometimes we absorb the energy from other people. We absorb that energy. It's not so much of their words and their actions. We absorb, especially if you're an extremely empathic person, or you are sensitive, hypersensitive. We absorb energies, okay? And I know that when you are around people for a very long time and they are giving off this energy or they're giving off this all I can say is really energy. I don't really have another word for it. When they're giving off this energy because there is something that's going on within them that they haven't resolved within themselves, but they're giving it out to you unconsciously or consciously, or whether they're even saying anything or doing anything, you can literally take that on. You can take that on within yourself. And this, like I said, it's very real with psychology. Like this is real stuff. And people can get their they can get really, really low self-esteem purely because of someone else's projection or being around people who are projecting. Okay, and that's just on the practical surface level, just of what is said and what is done and what is heard and what is being developed in that circumstance. But I'm speaking about like energy. So just picture the energy of that. If someone is having something that they feel in themselves that they cannot acknowledge, but they want to put that onto someone else, and you absorb that. If you're an empathic person, if you're a sensitive person, you will absorb that. So you will absorb their low self-esteem, their low self-worth, their low confidence, their shame, their guilt, their pain, their resentment. You will absorb it. I know, so because this has happened to me. This happened to me, and I see that it happens to a lot of people, and my higher self just tells me that this is true. I just know it's true. Okay. um to make a little bit of a variance now, with projections, I want to also talk about karmic lessons. Okay, so really that is, in other words, what people call generational curses. So I know that if you have a life and you have your life lessons and you came here to learn those lessons, for some reason or the other, if you do not learn those lessons the way you need to learn them, they're going to get passed down. You die and you pass away and you leave this body and you go back to heaven, you go back to another dimension, okay, before you came here, the place that you were before you came here, you go back there, and that lesson still needs to be learned. That lesson still needs to complete itself. And I believe, as a lot of people talk about generational curses, that lesson or those issues that have not been resolved, that have not been dealt with, gets passed on to another person. And many of the times it is through the offspring, it is through the family. It's a generational curse. It comes down through the generations. Okay. And I wanted to say also that with the general curses, generational curses, sorry, um, it comes through the DNA. It comes through the DNA. That's how it's passed down through the DNA. So a lot of the times we think of DNA as just passing down personal traits, personality traits, physical attributes, our skin color, our, you know, character as a person and all that other stuff, or features. But also DNA can pass down these lessons, these karmic lessons that have not been learned by the past generations, and it needs to be learned. So it comes through the DNA. So you have these imprints. And I know for a fact that within our own life, we all have our own lessons. And we all have the things that we need to solve and resolve and, fix. If you, for some reason or the other, do not learn, okay, or you refuse to learn, or you're unwilling to learn, life is going to bring that lesson to you again. And then if you do not learn again, it's going to come back again and again and again and again and again until you learn it. So you know that if you do not learn that lesson in your lifetime and you suffer the consequences because of that, it needs to be learned. It has to be learned. That's how karma is. Everything is a circle. So everything needs to come back full circle. It cannot be left undone. Everything in life is a circle. So if you have a lesson and it's not being learned by one person, it's going to be learned by the next person. It's going to be learned by the next generation. It has to complete itself. Okay, and you see this in the world, like with all different things that we go through. There's always these cycles. Things come right back around over and over and over again. So life lessons are really no different. They're really no different. Okay, but yes, definitely, and there's things that come through the DNA. Okay, low self-esteem can come through the DNA. You know, just like I was talking about with generational curses, if you notice, it could be within your family or someone else's family where there's just a general generational curse in that family. So maybe they've dealt with or they're dealing with, struggling with an addiction, okay, drug addictions or alcoholism or depression or, anorexia or um I don't know, like sickness, disease. You know what I'm saying? And you have to sit there and try to figure out for yourself, why is it that this one family has all these same issues over and over and over and over again throughout every generation? Why? Why this family? So I would say that that really lends to what I'm talking about with karmic lessons and generational curses. But I really just think that they are lessons that need to be learned. If they're not going to be learned in this generation, it's going to be learned in the next. And if it's not this one, it's going to be the next one and the next one. And I believe it gets worse and worse and worse until it wraps up, until it completes itself. But anyway, that's something to think about. But the next point I wanted to talk about is not having. I'm have a I have a paper over here. Sorry, so that's what I'm looking over here, and I don't really need to. But the next point is spiritual awareness. Not having spiritual awareness, or not having spiritual knowledge of your true self and your true spiritual origins. So if you do not know or you do not have much of a spiritual awareness, which means that you don't have an awareness of something bigger than yourself or grander than yourself, and if you don't think of something being invisible, and everything that is just physical and tangible is the only thing that is real, you're going to have a really hard time building good self-esteem and true self-esteem, because if you do not believe that there is something more, you are only by default, um, you're by default limited to only what you see and what you hear and what what you hear, what you see, what you've experienced, what you can touch, what people have said to you, what you see on TV, what you read in books. That's all you can base yourself on, because that's all you see. And the majority of times, what you learn from other people, what you've read in books, what you've seen, it's it's not correct information, or many of the times you are just absorbing more distorted perceptions, lies, and people's perspectives of themselves, which are not even, really accurate in the first place. So you're basically at the mercy of what other people say. You're at the mercy of what other people think about you. You're at the mercy of what happens to you. You can only base your self-worth on what happened to you, or what people said, or what you've heard or read. And this is why you need to have a spiritual understanding or basis if you want to see yourself in a higher light. Because if you are going to absorb what's in the world alone, you're going to come up pretty confused, and most likely you're unable to see yourself in a better light, because this world is very harsh. It's very harsh. Okay, so when you derive yourself from a state, or a state of being, okay, where you are perfect and you are limitless and you are all powerful spiritually, it's going to raise your self-esteem. You're going to think more of yourself. You are going to think more of yourself when you think that You are more than your skin, and you are more than your body, and you are more than what your family did and what your family's struggling with or what you've been told. You're going to have a bigger, a much better sense of who you are. I believe you need that because I know specifically with me, I have worked so hard on myself mentally and emotionally, and I read books and I watched motivational programs and I delved into all of these self-help, things and techniques and just thinking positive and you know what I'm saying? And I did all of that stuff. I did all of that stuff. I healed, I did the work on healing my wounds and all that stuff, but still there was like a hole inside of myself. And it's because I didn't know of my true spiritual self. I didn't know. I didn't know my true spiritual nature. And I was never complete until I remembered that, remembered that, until I remembered that within myself. And my soul told me that again, once again. Okay, I was never complete until I knew that. Okay, until I knew my true spiritual self, I could not complete myself. It's just something was missing all the time, and that's what led to the insecurity and low self-esteem and the low self-worth because it wasn't complete. It wasn't a complete understanding of who I was. So anyway, that's what I want to say about that. Okay, so I believe that, with your low self-esteem, insecurity, worth, and confidence, there is some kind of blockage and something is not being put together. Something is not being completed here. There's not a complete picture here. There is something obstructed or it's hindered. Something is not being completed and put together. Something is not whole and complete. And you can only be whole and complete until you know your true spiritual self. That's what I believe, honestly. I just don't see any other way around that because the world will tell you all kind of things about yourself. It will tell you all kinds of stuff that really have nothing to do with who you really are. Because until I knew who I really was, I couldn't, I could not really get to know the real me. It was only until I accepted, I say, okay, well, I'm more than this. So then that's when I began to uncover all the stuff that I really was, right? What spiritually who I really was and what it is that I had on the inside that was buried for so long because of all the lies and the, distortions of, perceptions of who I was. That was the only way. It was the only way to complete myself. So anyway, yes, there needs to be some readjusting and remembering of who you really are. Okay, bringing yourself back to your true place as who you really are. Okay, another last reason why you may be experiencing low self-esteem, worth, and confidence. Um, there's a reason that it could be, you have a blocked chakra, and I was speaking a little bit about the solar plexus chakra in the last few videos. Not really going to go through that again because I already talked about that, but I will make separate videos for the chakras, okay? Everything about those chakras. But I know that with the solar plexus chakra, if that is blocked or deficient, that can cause low self-esteem. And or the sacral chakra or navel chakra, if there's a blockage or deficiency, that can cause low self-esteem and confidence. Also, base chakra too, that can also cause low self-esteem and low confidence and worth. But of course, everybody is affected a little bit differently, you know, because we all have different flavors of who we are, personalities, and the way that we react, and what's important to us and what's not. So it's not completely, purely, all the way, it fits everyone perfectly. So it might affect people a little bit slightly different. Okay, but overall, in general, this is how it affects us because these are, you know, this is spiritual stuff. It's not like, it's spiritual stuff. Metaphysical, metaphysical stuff. So, overall, but yeah, I'll get more into the chakras later because I mean, the video is going to be way too long if I talk about that. But yeah, those are the reasons why you could possibly be still struggling with low self-esteem, confidence, and worth. And hopefully, it helped you the way it helped me in learning about myself and learning about why I was struggling with what I was struggling with for so long. And I'm going to be making some more videos. So I hope you have a good day and take care.